Mass deportations. Two words thrown around casually at rallies, a core promise of a potential second Trump term, central to the controversial Project 2025 blueprint. But have you stopped to ask how? Seriously, how? Where do you put millions of people? What happens when families hide, communities resist, or chaos erupts? Does the plan literally involve building vast new American detention camps? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, would President Trump order the U.S. military to turn its weapons on American civilians to enforce this agenda? This isn't dystopian fiction, it's a detailed plan being crafted right now by powerful figures hoping to reshape America. What is Project 2025? The Heritage Foundation's initiative, goals, key figures, Paul Dawn, Kevin Roberts, funding. The 920-page Mandate for Leadership, a detailed conservative governing plan. Focus, dismantling the administrative state, centralizing power in the presidency, installing ideologically vetted personnel, Schedule F revival. The immigration chapter, a core pillar. Key goals, end birthright citizenship, via dubious EO, reinstate and massively expand remain in Mexico, accelerate deportations, eliminate, catch and release, empower states to enforce federal immigration law. The deport them all mantra, moving beyond targeting criminals to all undocumented immigrants, estimated 11+ million. Rhetoric versus reality, how campaign slogans translate into specific, radical policy proposals. Why this matters now. The plan is ready to go for day one of a potential Republican administration. It's not abstract, it's operational. The million-person question, where do you put them all? The staggering scale, ICE's current capacity, 34,000 beds, versus the target population, millions. The sheer impossibility under current infrastructure. Expanding the existing system, is it enough? Reviving and expanding dedicated ICE facilities, locations like Dilley, Texas, South Texas Family Residential Center, largest family detention, Karnes City, Texas, Adelanto, California. Capacity limits, costs, past human rights abuses documented, medical neglect, sexual abuse, poor conditions. Utilizing contracted detention centers, CoreCivic, GEO Group business model, lobbying power, history of violations. Can they scale up rapidly? Where? Rural areas with space but limited infrastructure. The camps scenario, is it on the table? Historical precedent, Japanese-American internment, 1942 to 1946, a dark chapter invoked by critics. How was it done? Fairgrounds, racetracks, hastily built barracks. Military bases as detention sites, explicitly mentioned in Project 2025 documents. Which bases? Closed bases like Fort Ord. Active bases. Pros/cons, security versus remoteness, infrastructure. Legal hurdles, posse comitatus implications. Building new, temporary, facilities, FEMA camps. Revived World War II-era plans. Logistics of rapid construction, cost, contractors, location selection, remote versus accessible. The specter of tent cities in deserts or plains. Leased space, convention centers, empty malls, warehouses. Feasibility, security, humanitarian disaster potential. The digital detention angle, intensive alternatives to detention, ATD, with GPS monitoring, ankle bracelets, phone apps. Could this be expanded massively? Privacy concerns, effectiveness, cost versus physical detention. Is this a viable alternative for millions or just a supplement? State and local cooperation, Project 2025 encourages state/local law enforcement to act. Could state prisons or local jails be used? Legal battles, sanctuary cities versus cooperating jurisdictions, capacity issues, federal funding mechanisms. The deportation rail concept, rapid processing centers near the border. Designed for immediate removal, minimizing detention time. Feasibility given legal backlogs and home country cooperation challenges. Section 3, Unleashing the Military. Soldiers versus American civilians. Core Question 2, 10 to 12 minutes script/2500 words. The Insurrection Act, Trump's favorite tool. What it is: the president's authority to deploy federal troops domestically to suppress insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy. Broad interpretation: how Trump and allies, like Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn, view its potential use, far beyond traditional insurrections. Project 2025 likely envisions its use for border security or restoring order during mass protests against deportations. Precedent: Trump's threats in 2020 regarding George Floyd protests. Eisenhower/Little Rock, 1957, versus potential misuse. Posse Comitatus Act, the supposed barrier. What it prohibits: using the Army/Air Force for law enforcement, executing laws, unless authorized by Constitution or Act of Congress. How Project 2025 could bypass it. Insurrection Act invocation, explicit exception. Using the National Guard, federalized or state, blurrier lines. Using other branches, Navy, Marines, less clear restrictions. Debated. Support roles, claiming military is only providing logistics, transport, or perimeter security, not direct arrests. Where does support end and law enforcement begin? Potential scenarios for military use. Border reinforcement, directly assisting CBP/ICE in mass apprehensions. Soldiers with rifles confronting migrants. Quelling disturbances, deploying troops to cities facing massive protests against deportations, e.g., LA, NYC, Chicago. Soldiers confronting U.S. citizens blocking ICE vans or protesting. Transport and guarding detainees, military convoys moving detainees to camps, military police guarding facilities. Targeting sanctuary cities, federal troops enforcing immigration laws in jurisdictions where local authorities refuse. The slippery slope and grave implications. Militarization of police, how military deployment normalizes the presence of armed force in daily life. Erosion of civil-military divide, fundamental to American democracy. Risk of politicizing the military. Escalation of violence, armed soldiers facing civilian protesters creates an inherently volatile situation. Potential for Kent State, 1970, scenarios. Chilling effect on dissent, fear of military response suppressing legitimate protest. International condemnation, images of U.S. troops detaining civilians or confronting protesters would be a global shock. Beyond logistics, the human cost and legal firestorm. Humanitarian crisis guaranteed. Family separation 2.0, on a potentially massive scale. Traumatizing children. Conditions in detention, overcrowding, disease, abuse, amplified exponentially. Potential deaths. Due process evaporated, can courts handle millions of cases? Will hearings become rubber stamps? Project 2025 aims to slash legal avenues. Impact on communities, economic devastation, agriculture, service industries, social terror, fractured communities. U.S. citizen children left behind. Legal challenges and constitutional battles. Fourth Amendment, mass warrantless arrests. Stop and ask for papers, policies. Racial profiling inherent. Fifth Amendment, deprivation of liberty without due process, especially with rushed deportations. Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment via detention condition. 14th Amendment, equal protection, targeting based on ethnicity/national origin, birthright citizenship challenge. First Amendment, suppressing protests against the policy. Insurrection Act abuse lawsuits, immediate challenges to any deployment. States' rights battles, sanctuary cities/states versus federal coercion, including military force. Economic and social fallout. Massive costs, detention, $140+/person/day, transportation, military deployment, legal battles, lost tax revenue, economic disruption. Who pays? Labor shortages, crippling key sectors. Social cohesion shattered, deepening divisions, fostering fear and distrust within communities. International relations damage, strained relations with Latin America, global condemnation. Historical echoes and authoritarian playbooks. Not the first time, Japanese internment, the clear parallel, mass detention based on ethnicity/national origin during perceived crisis. Acknowledged injustice. Are we doomed to repeat it? Echoes of darker regimes, comparisons, used carefully, to tactics seen in authoritarian states, mass roundups, detention camps, use of military against populace, scapegoating minorities. The crisis narrative, how Project 2025 and Trump frame immigration as an existential threat, invasion, poisoning the blood, to justify extreme, extra-legal measures, a classic authoritarian tactic. Consolidation of power, mass deportations/domestic military use as tools not just for policy, but for demonstrating total executive control and intimidating opposition. Feasibility or fantasy? Obstacles and pushback. Logistical impossibility. Can the bureaucracy, even purged and reshaped, actually execute this at scale? Finding personnel, i.e., military, guards, transport, locations, managing millions. Judicial brick wall. Even a conservative Supreme Court may balk at the most egregious constitutional violations and Insurrection Act abuses. Lower courts would be flooded with injunctions. State and local rebellion, sanctuary jurisdictions refusing cooperation, potentially even actively hindering federal efforts. Could lead to unprecedented federal-state confrontations. Public backlash, widespread protests, civil disobedience, potential general strikes. Media coverage, even conservative outlets, of detention camp conditions and military confrontations. International obstacles, many countries refuse to accept mass deportations of their citizens without proper documentation/process. Deportation requires cooperation. The role of Congress, could Congress defund the effort? Pass laws restricting detention or military use? Depends on composition. Impeachment over abuses. Why this matters now, beyond partisanship. This isn't hypothetical, Project 2025 exists. Key figures are serious. A Trump win makes this the governing agenda. Preparation is happening. A test for American democracy, this plan fundamentally challenges core principles, due process, limits on executive power, civilian control of the military, protection from arbitrary detention. It's a potential point of no return. The stakes for every American, even if you support stricter immigration enforcement, the methods proposed threaten the rights and fabric of the nation for everyone. Militarization and mass detention change society irrevocably. Demanding answers, holding candidates accountable to explain specifically how they would execute these plans. Rejecting vague promises and fear-mongering. Project 2025's vision for mass deportations isn't just about immigration policy, it's a blueprint for transforming America into something unrecognizable. The questions of where millions would be detained and whether the military would be unleashed on American streets aren't hyperbolic, they are the direct, terrifying consequences of the plan being promoted. We've seen the historical echoes, we've tallied the human cost, we've mapped the legal minefield. This agenda promises chaos, cruelty, and a fundamental rupture in American democracy and civil liberties. Is this the future we choose? The machinery is being built. The rhetoric is heating up. Silence and complacency are not options. We need to see the plans. We need to demand details. We need to understand the costs, human, constitutional, and societal. We must decide, before it's too late, if this is the path America will take. Share this video. Discuss it. Challenge the narratives. Ask the hard questions. Contact your representatives. Vote with the future of American liberty in mind. The clock is ticking.